Welcome to Slay, the podcast where we dive into all aspects of female health, fitness, and life. I'm your host, Louise Hazel, and in today's episode, we're going to shine a spotlight on a trailblazing woman who is breaking barriers and disrupting the sport of tennis. In recent years, we've witnessed a surge of innovation and leadership from women who are challenging the status quo and revolutionizing the way that tennis is played, watched, and experienced. From Serena Williams' performance clothing and clashes with umpires to Naomi Osaka's interviews, there's been a lot of controversy about the way that women have been treated in what is traditionally a male dominated sport. So get ready to be inspired, empowered, and informed as we celebrate the creativity, resilience, and leadership that led one woman to break down barriers in what was once a sport for the rich and elite. Joining us today is co-founder of Rich Sport, former tennis player and best-selling author, Sarah Koudouzian. Sarah!
Oh my God, you're so good.
Oh, stop it.
I was just taken back. I was like, who's coming on? And I was like, oh, it's me.
It's you.
It's me.
I
You
love
made
it.
that sound so amazing. Thank you.
Well, you are amazing. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Not a problem. So, Sarah, I just want to give everyone a little bit of backstory. We met, must be like, what, 2 years ago now? I think it was maybe 2 years ago.
No,
Year and a half?
you got married last year.
Yeah.
I
Did we
met
play
you.
tennis that season?
Yes, I met you a couple months prior to that. And then you invited me to your bachelorette party.
That's right. I literally jump all in. I'm that person. But we met at like a invite only tennis match and you were just the sweetest person. Now, I was obviously like, my level of tennis was like 10 levels lower than where you were at. I saw you hitting the ball and you were so patient with me and we're like, oh, we're going to play together. So we then ended up taking on a couple of guys and you were just guiding me through the game, giving me, tips on my forehand. And I was just taken back with how patient you were, but also what a woman's woman you were. And I was like, respect. This is a person I could spend some time with. And then, fast forward, we're dancing up a storm at my wedding, plotting all kinds of like tennis events and stuff like that. But I want to know more about you.
Well, I
And
want to go back to you on the court. First and foremost, you were so fierce in your outfit. I was like, who is this?
bless you.
I need to go up to her. You looked absolutely stunning.
Thank
And
you.
the way that you moved, I knew you were an athlete.
But
And
just not a
then,
tennis player.
no, I mean, listen, tennis is just such a different type of a sport. But I was like, no, she's an athlete. And not just an athlete. I know she's an elite athlete because of the way you were moving. And then you so casually were like, oh, yeah, gold medal winner. And then the video.
I made you
of
watch all the videos.
I insisted to watch it. You didn't make me watch it. I insisted. And I was like, rewind. Let's see that win and that victory again. So I was like, yes, Louise.
Aw.
So anytime I get to partner with a fierce competitor, I love it. And I love to partner with women. And especially if you can play against the boys.
Absolutely. Now, Sarah, you're a fierce competitor yourself. Talk to me about what got you started in the sport of tennis.
I started when I was 5 years old, and my dad had the vision that if he has a daughter, she is going to play tennis because he fell in love with tennis. He was actually a soccer player, but he wanted his daughter to play tennis, and I loved the sport, and I kind of picked it up naturally, as natural as it would get because tennis is a very unnatural sport. It's quite hard to just pick it up naturally, but hand-eye coordination was on point, and I loved it very much, and played competitively starting at the age of 8 and competed throughout the Southern California, United States, and played all sorts of tournaments, nationals, and did a bit of overtraining until it really took a hit on my pursuit of going pro because that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to go pro. I had no desire to go to college or any of that. I saw myself going pro until I got injured, and it took a very different turn from there.
Now, your dad was your coach. Is that right?
Yes.
Cool. Talk to me about how that ended up happening. Because I remember back in my own athletics career, my dad was really encouraging. He was like, go and play sport. But he took a backseat role in my sport. And there were times when I had to kind of push him to the backseat.
Uh-huh.
How was that for you, having the parent in that kind of leading role, leading with you?
I would definitely say do not coach your kids. I will definitely say that unless you've had that real coaching experience and not a parent turned coach.
Hmm.
Now, if you're a coach and then you're coaching your kid and you can put the emotions aside
Hmm.
and leave everything on the court
Hmm.
as opposed to bringing it into the household,
Right.
I definitely will say, okay, you have a better chance of having a good relationship with your athlete and your kid.
Hmm.
But it's definitely hard, and it was definitely hard. And I, at one point, was just very grateful I got injured
Mm.
because I was like, oh, I get to take a break now.
Mm.
And just leaving tennis completely from there is something that a lot of athletes, I think you get to that point if you've been burnt out and
Hmm.
you are burnt out, you'll get to that point where you're like, I don't know if I want to do this anymore because you
Right.
lose the love of the game and the passion
Hmm.
because at such an early age it becomes a job,
Yes.
and a job where you have a tough boss.
Mm.
And it's very hard when that tough boss also is your parent.
Hmm.
So a lot of that is what led to the burnout and how I felt with
Mm.
tennis by the age 16.
Mm. Now, you were once like top 50 in the country, which is literally no mean feat as it is. Like, tennis
Yeah.
is such a competitive sport. It's not like the heptathlon. There are like a handful of us in the world. Like, it's so competitively played here and so revered, especially back home in the UK as well. Now, you're what, aged 16, you're in the top 50 in the country, and then you sustain this injury. Talk to
Mhm.
me about the moment you knew that you were badly hurt.
I remember the day vividly, actually. So I was dealing with a cyst, and I don't know if you want to see it, but
Uh-huh.
most people look at it and they're like, "What is that?" And I'm like, "Yeah, that's my marking.
Uh-huh.
You clearly were overtrained." And my dad was the very militant type of training back then, the very old school style of you play through pain,
Mhm.
and rain or shine, you're on that court, you're training 7 days a week, 6 hours, 5, 6 hours a day. It did not matter. So it was that kind of onset stuff that was taking a toll on my body. It wasn't like it happened all of a sudden, it was taking the toll on my body. And one particular tournament I was playing, I was in the semifinals or quarterfinals, I can't remember, and I don't retire because in tennis, if you're familiar with it, if you're hurt or for whatever reason you need to retire, you retire. But I don't retire. And I was hitting a forehand shot, and that racket went flying out of my hand, and I was like, I think I broke my hand. Like, I think I broke my
Did you
hand.
feel it? Did you
Oh,
feel?
yeah, and I picked up the racket still,
Mhm.
and I could barely grab it, and I tried. Even though I was in that pain, I was like, "We're gonna try." I think at that point, the adrenaline was still rushing, so I
Right.
didn't feel the full-blown onset pain
Mhm.
until the adrenaline wore off, and I had to retire, and it was a very important tournament. It was a Pasadena tournament, and 2 weeks after that was my surgery, and they go in and they were like, "You had a few broken bones." And I
I
was
was
like, "Hmm,
I was gonna say there must have been multiple fractures
yes,
already there that you were perhaps playing through that you
yes."
weren't aware of. How many breaks or fractures were there? Do you recall?
I am almost positive it was 4.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow.
Very high pain tolerance.
Wow, that's incredible. I literally just recently fractured my humerus.
Oh my
And that
gosh.
was in a skiing accident, and that was excruciating. There was literally, I was holding my hand here,
Mhm,
so I can't imagine, your wrist obviously being something we use every single day in our everyday activities, how
mhm.
that must have, been affecting you physically, but also mentally.
It definitely took a toll on me mentally because after the surgery, I had so many emotions come in,
Mm.
and you get a lot of downtime after surgery
Yeah.
because you're in a cast and you can't really do much
Hmm.
because you have to rest and you're on meds. And I just remember spiraling at one point
Mm.
because all I knew was tennis.
Right.
And all I wanted to do was tennis.
Hmm.
And then I didn't want to do it. And then when my wish came true, I started to spiral by saying, well, now what am I going to do? I don't
Mm.
have the best grades. I did not have the best grades. I was homeschooled. and I didn't have the top tier education that other people had that were focusing on education and being able to take that education and go into a great college. So for me, it was survival mode at that point
Mm.
of trying to figure out what am I going to do? Because once the colleges, because I did have offers, and once
Mhm.
they found out I'm injured,
Right.
everything dropped, which is understandable. Like, who's going to take a injured athlete?
So brutal, isn't it?
It's brutal, and you learn that. I mean, learning that cutthroat part of the world at 16 years old definitely takes a toll on
So
you.
what did you do about it?
So after that, I had to get a job because my dad was like, if you're going to go to college, you're going to study business. And I was like, I don't want to study business. I want to study kinesiology.
Mm.
And I want to understand what happened to me so I can help out other athletes. And he was like, well, I'm not going to pay for college unless you study business, because you're going to study business and you're going to take over my business, and I
Mhm.
didn't wanna do that, so I started working at Champs
Mhm.
Sports and, learned so much about sneakers and started to think about how I'm gonna get into college. Because,
Mhm.
like I said, I would have gone to community college if I didn't have the background in tennis and reached out to one of my contacts that I had here at one of the universities who was willing to take me on as a walk-on while I was
Mhm.
still rehabbing, and that's pretty much what I did. I
Mhm.
had to figure it out. And I think at such a young age, again, in a cutthroat world of having to figure out, like, what am I going to do with my life now?
Mhm.
It really, really made me think on the spot and just get creative at an early age of how to be resourceful
Mm.
and not just take the the letdown and the shutdown be the final answer.
Mhm.
I don't know how that happened other
Mhm.
than being an athlete. I think a lot of it has to deal with the fact that I played such an individual sport,
Mhm.
because in tennis, you don't get coaching. You don't have a partner, you don't have a team. You're on there trying to figure it out.
Mhm.
So I think those onset skills that I learned as a tennis player contributed to how I finessed my way into getting into a 4-year D1 school, because I didn't have the education for that.
Mm.
I walked on because, as you know, athletes do get some privileges.
Absolutely.
And anyone who doesn't know that, now you know.
Yeah.
And I did not have the grades or the requirements to get into a 4-year university. I
Mhm.
should have been in community college, but
Mhm.
we were resourceful.
Exactly. So, do you feel like those skill sets that you were already putting to play at such a young age, trying to figure out how the world works, trying to leverage the skills that you had, how does that play out now as a female entrepreneur? Do you see those things still coming up? Like, what are the challenges that you feel that you've been had to be, nimble around?
Honestly, I love the fact that I learned at such a young age how to figure it out. Something as simple as figure it out. Like,
Hmm.
you're on the court, if you're down 5-0, you need to figure out how you're going to come back and actually be victorious.
Mm.
And I feel till this day, it has helped my career in so many different ways, with not taking no for an answer and not letting someone else and what they say and what they feel be my final destination. I think
Mm.
that's really a helpful trait that I learned so young on, and I'm very grateful for the sport. There's so many things that I can say that I hope a lot of young females do play a sport, in particularly tennis,
Hmm.
because it can teach you so much. And I find that aspect of it to be why it's a lifetime sport,
Mm.
because you're playing it off the court as well.
They say that tennis is about winning the points that matter. Is that true?
I feel, for me, it's more about you and that ball
Hmm.
as opposed to you and your opponent.
Hmm.
Most of the battles is about the battles you're having in your own head, because it's such a mental game. So
Mm.
the points that matter in your head, because every point matters.
Absolutely.
It all depends on what you're thinking in your head because that's why they tell you it's such a mentally tough sport.
Hmm.
I mean, I played yesterday and I double faulted 5 times, and I was getting ready to call my coach and be like, "What is going on here?"
Hmm.
And I was like, "Why are you gonna call him? It's you. What
Mm.
are you doing? Why is this happening? Take a second, breathe, and figure out how you're going to fix this and
Mm.
stop double faulting."
Absolutely. I love the fact that there's this self reflection. But the interesting thing about tennis is you have just a split decision or split second
Mhm,
to make a decision, a
mhm,
split second to react to, a play that's just been played, whether
mhm,
it be, a slice. Like I've played tennis enough to know, like, when I'm being outplayed.
mhm.
And so, like, how do you navigate that? Like, is this something that you feel like, okay, you're learning in the game as to how your opponent's playing, or is it somewhat predictable? Can you predict the move that's coming next?
You can, and the way that I personally like to play is not to be reactive, but to be active.
Mm.
And that's how you stay in control of the points, at least for how I play. I'm a
Hmm.
very aggressive player. You can sit here and give me whatever ball, I'm still going to play my game.
Mm.
And that's really important for me. I would rather go out there and lose playing 110% the way I wanna play because I'm having such a good time now,
Hmm.
than going out there and playing not to lose.
Hmm.
Because 'cause I'm gonna go out there to play to win.
I feel like when you've watched like the best games of tennis, you can always see there's somebody who is on the giving end and
Yes,
then the person who's on the receiving end. And when I
absolutely.
watch these it's evident from the get-go, and you just feel for that person who's having to return. And
Yeah.
you know what I mean, they're not even necessarily returning serve, but there's just this pace that perhaps an opponent is setting that is blistering. And
Mhm.
then they have the other person running all over the court, left, right, literally running them ragged. Brutal. So you obviously like to take that kind of position, that strength position. But tell me about your proudest moment in the sport. What was the day or the game or the moment that changed everything for you?
Honestly, to answer this question, if you were to ask me back in my playing days, I would have given you such a different answer as opposed to now coming back to the sport after taking a 10-year hiatus. And I would say my proudest moment is putting myself out there to come back
Mm,
and letting myself feel like a beginner again.
mm,
I think those type of vulnerable moments and tough moments, because it's very tough. I mean, I remember the first day I really got back into training and I could go side to side, 25 balls, and I would barely huff and puff.
mhm.
And coming back a few months ago, like fully coming back training style, I was ready to pass out.
Yeah.
And I remember just sitting on the ground and crying
Mhm.
because I was like, what is this feeling?
Humbling.
It was a very humbling experience. I
Yeah.
actually shared that on my social media and I said, it can be one of the most humbling and difficult experiences to come back where you once felt at the top and then to start back up from the bottom. And I think my proudest moment is even though I wanted to throw away the racket again and be like, why would I put myself through this again?
Mhm.
I decided to go with it and to really push myself and say, you know what, you're going to break this boundary right now and you're going to push through it because throughout life, you're going to continuously get moments where you're going to be humbled. And if you throw in the towel now, what are you going to do later on? So it was a very mentally strengthening day for me. And I think that's my proudest moment, I
I
would
love
say, to
that.
come back from something like that.
And are those reps getting easier?
Those reps are getting easier, and then my coach is like, "Oh, okay, those got easier, let's take it up a notch now." And I was like, "You picked violence today," because
Exactly.
I was just getting accustomed, and obviously from a training standpoint, I understand it's now time for phase 2.
Yeah.
So,
The savage. He sounds like he needs a day off.
he was a former pro, so it's like no emotions really, so he's like, "Okay."
That makes sense. Sarah, you recently co-founded Rich Sport with one of your childhood friends. Talk to us about the company. What's it all about? What can we expect?
This is such an exciting question because I held off on talking about this with anyone but you because I was very excited to share this with you because
Thank
of
you.
my connection I had with you. And Rich Sport is myself and Nicole Dunn. She is my childhood best friend since we were 13 years old. And we both grew up with tennis. Two different stories. Nicole recreationally played and grew up as a childhood rec player and then
Hmm.
turned into a high school coach and then played a little club. And then I am on the other side of the spectrum of playing competitively, trying to go pro. And 2 years ago, I was driving, and I'm a serial entrepreneur trying to figure out the next thing I'm going to do. What am I going to do? And Nicole's always been my ride or die, where I would call her with all my crazy ideas, and she'd always be the one to support. And she'd be like, "Yeah, that's a great idea." She'd do the logo for me and help me out. And again, hear me out when I was ready to throw in the towel with each endeavor. And 2 years ago, I called her and I said, "Hey, I have this idea, and I know you have your tennis connection too. I really want to know, why are all of the tennis accessories and things out there marketed the same way?
Hmm.
They all look the same. It's all geared towards one class of people.
Hmm.
They're all the same color palette. And to be quite honest, I've had zero connection with any of them." I said, "I feel like we need to get into tennis accessories. Do you want to do it with me?" And it was a very casual conversation. She was like, "Sure." Because Nicole's very chill. Nicole is also a surfer,
Hmm.
and she's very chill. And she was like, "Sure." And so we just, let it marinate a little bit. And a couple of days later, we're like, "Let's set up a Zoom meeting." We're trying to make it official. And we started talking about the name.
Hmm.
And she's very good at getting creatives out of people. She's a designer. So she's a designer, artist, and she's just amazing. And she was like, "Let's talk about the feeling and how does it make you feel?" And I went back when I was in 6th and 7th grade, and I grew up in the public schools, and tennis was never the cool sport. It was
Mm.
always track or basketball, football, volleyball, baseball, never tennis. Never.
Mm.
It was kind of looked as the nerdy sport.
Oh,
I
that
know.
surprises me.
R- It's different in the States because I think we had this conversation where it's different
Hmm.
in the UK
Hmm.
and it's different over here. And so when I would tell people embarrassed, like, "Oh, I play tennis," and they didn't know to the extent until they knew because I had to leave class and go to a tournament. And they were like, "Oh, you play that rich sport. You play that rich sport." And I was like, "What? No, we're not rich. My parents can barely afford the
Hmm.
lessons because it's one of the most expensive sports to play." And I remember that feeling because I was like, "Is this what they think of me? They think I'm rich." Like, I
Yeah.
felt insulted because I
Hmm.
was like, "I go to public school," and that's definitely not it. I just so happened to be good that I would get, practices taken care of and things like that and sponsorships. And I told Nicole, I was like, "I think we should call it rich sport, one word." Because that's how
Mm.
it made me feel.
Hmm.
It's this rich sport. And I said, and I want it to feel that it's for everybody,
Absolutely.
not just for the rich. And
Hmm.
what makes it rich is that you get to play.
Mm.
Because to us, rich is a feeling.
Hmm.
It's not money. I've seen some of the richest people in the world miserable.
Absolutely.
And I know what it's like to be on the court now, and that makes me feel rich. I
Mm.
feel like that rich girl energy on that court, and it's an inside thing.
Mhm.
And that's what we want from our company, and that's what we're setting. And it's a feeling from the inside out.
So, what kind of accessories can we expect?
You can expect grip bands,
Mm.
over grips,
Mm.
dampeners,
Oh.
and it's all in the storyline. We are Y2K kids,
Hmm.
and we even made
Peace.
yes, we did the millennial peace sign for our shoe. And it was very important for us to get you to feel the feeling when you touch it, because we didn't everything is in-house designed.
Hmm.
Nicole and I talk about it, and then she sketches it out in Procreate and Illustrator, and then we play with mood boards on Canva. And it's very easy to just go to a manufacturer and just stamp your logo and
Hmm.
stuff or have it printed. And that's not what we did.
Are we pimping our tennis rackets?
We are stylizing them.
Pimping is so Y2K.
Y2K pimp, like that
Pimp
movie,
my
Pimp
ride.
My Ride. Yeah,
Yeah,
Pimp
pimp
My
my
Racket.
racket.
Louise, that's going to be our campaign, and you're going to be our model.
There you go.
We're going to
As
have
long as
you.
I can bring that slogan. Do
The,
we have a slogan?
we do. Are we talking about it's about enriching your game. So we're
Absolutely.
enriching your game, and we are about giving back to the community. So with our first drop, we're
Hmm.
actually donating to an organization for underserved kids who can't really afford the sport. So we are gifting them rich sport gear
Amazing.
in hopes of spreading the awareness
Hmm.
of how tough it is to even afford to play this sport. And if we can do something about it where we constantly give back and do community events, that means so much to us and to the sport of tennis. And it's about time for a change.
Hmm.
It's not just about playing in a country club and doing the country club core, because when you look at those type of ads, when you look at those type of marketing tactics, you could see how it could make someone feel
Hmm.
about the sport. And there's
Absolutely.
more to tennis than tennis whites and playing
Mm.
in the country club.
I mean, it's typically always been an elitist sport. I remember
Yes.
having the privilege of going to Wimbledon,
Uh-huh.
and it was an amazing event, but an event being, the operative word, because everybody was dressed to the nines. You could only go in the clubhouse if you were wearing a certain attire.
Mhm.
You can only play in tennis whites.
Mhm.
And so there were a lot of rules. And, we're talking about the controversy around the sport that I feel women have been at the butt of for quite some time, especially when it comes to, you're a woman, we menstruate.
Yep.
Why on earth would you want to wear all white clothes
Mhm.
on, a day when you're on your cycle? We saw Serena Williams, really catching a lot of heat for the attire that she was
Mhm.
wearing, after the complications with the birth of her first child. And you can kind of see how not just the elitism of the sport, but the gender issues that have really kind of been pervasive ever since its inception. Have you experienced some of those things yourself?
I can say that for me, I can see it with other people trying to get into the sport.
Hmm.
And I can see where the elitist mentality happens.
Hmm.
And I can see it in a lot of different aspects of the sport
Hmm.
just by being a spectator for it. I was able to get away with a lot because I played at the level that I did, and I would go into country clubs in Nike Pro shorts and a Hanes t-shirt,
Hmm.
and I did not care.
Hmm.
And I knew I could get away with it because, again, my level of play.
Hmm.
But I was able to get to that level of play. So imagine if you were not at that level of play and then
Yes.
you were being told, you cannot enter, you cannot do this, you cannot do that unless X, Y, and Z.
Hmm.
And when you watch a lot of the tennis matches, it's such a stern sport as
Hmm.
opposed to when you're watching track and field or basketball or any of the other team sports.
The culture is just so
It's
different.
so different.
Mm.
And I do feel that in 2024, there should be a change happening.
Mm.
And that's why it was very important for us to use the word revolutionize,
Hmm.
because we're disrupting what's been done all of these years. And it's about time that someone or two female founders came in to revolutionize it,
Hmm.
because I guarantee with what we are doing, you have not seen it in tennis.
Mm.
And that's why we picked the colors that we did to really,
Which are vibrant beyond belief. What would you call it? Is it tangerine? Like, what is the color orange? Because your aesthetic is bright, bold,
Yes.
blood orange.
We call it rich sport orange.
Rich sport orange, of course.
Yes.
Can we get this in like a nail color? I think maybe. Oh, we can. Okay,
Let
okay,
us hope, but my nails
okay.
definitely are doing
We need
the most because
we
we
need to get
decided
this in a
that.
color.
Yes.
Right, we're hitting up. I'm going to put it down now. Sarah Gibson Tuttle of Olive and June. We want a rich sport nail color, please.
We do. We
Okay,
want
we're
a rich
gonna.
sport energy
I love
color.
that. I love that collab.
Because orange in general is such a rebellious color.
Yeah.
And it was very important for us
Who do
for
you
all
think of when
aspects.
you think? Okay. Who do you think of when you think of the color orange?
I'm going to be a Leo to answer that and say myself
Yourself.
because
Okay, got you.
my phone case is orange. This is orange. What's crazy is,
I'm going with Prince Harry.
are you? No, I
Sorry, Hazza.
can't.
Rebel, you know what I mean? I
Okay.
think of like Willy Wonka. I think of
Okay.
like their hair. I think of these things that are literally, breaking the mold and
Yes,
breaking the stereotypes and again, breaking down those barriers.
absolutely. And what way to do it than with such a fire color like an orange? And
Energized.
absolutely. And Nicole and I we share the common interest of orange being our favorite color
Hmm.
since we were a kid.
Yeah.
So it was just so natural. We went and said, this is going to be our logo color.
I love it. I can't wait for everything to drop. Let me know whatever we can do to support, whether it be, community stuff, whether it be buying some stuff for some schools, some kids. In my mind, I'm like, are we gonna see whether we can break some of these kids into some country clubs, get them
Oh
to
yeah,
experience that good life? You know what I mean?
absolutely.
I feel like, you know, there's, I feel like there's an exposure that I think that you get as a young athlete once you
Yes.
reach a certain level that some young men and women are just never going to be privy to, that they deserve to
Mhm.
be privy to, so they know what is an option and what is available to them if they so choose that medium.
Absolutely.
I love it. The interesting thing is when we met, we were actually at a country club, and I remember I was wearing like a one-shouldered
It was
leotard,
so fierce.
and as I walked out, there was some lady who was like, "I love your
Uh-huh.
outfit," and so I feel like there's this desire for the sport of tennis to open up and for
Mhm.
people to be able to express themselves more. And I think what the ladies were saying that day was, I love the way that you're expressing yourself. They looked amazing themselves.
Mhm.
But I feel like, the sport is perhaps in this kind of tussle. I feel like the athletes are trying to revolutionize it.
Yes.
And you can tell whenever there's interviews, there's this element of disdain, perhaps for the association. And the association is trying to keep it elitist and as it has
Yes.
always been. At what point this year, it was actually just announced this week that the Michael Johnson, former 400-meter gold medalist,
Mhm.
absolute legend in the sport, love Mike. He has just announced that he's received $30 million worth of funding to start a new track league. Could you see this happening in pro tennis?
I can. And someone has to start it. I think to not be afraid to go against the grain
Hmm.
and to actually just take the risk and the chance. I understand what we are doing, and we're a startup, and I understand what is going to happen once our products are released
Hmm.
and how big corporations are going to most likely take advantage as they do, as you
Hmm.
hear about very many startups and what they endure in the beginning phases. But that's not stopping us.
Hmm.
There is no fear. There is only one mindset of we're gonna be the ones that make this change. And I think that once they see how we're presenting the sport, it's only going to be a matter of time that people are like, oh, maybe that's a good idea. Maybe we should do that.
Hmm.
Especially because I love watching the younger generation of tennis players right now and the rebellion that's already there. I loved how Naomi Osaka during an interview was like, I'm going to get fined
Hmm.
because I'm not, for my mental health, I'm not doing this interview.
Hmm.
I loved what she did.
Hmm.
I love how she expresses herself. You don't see that quite often
Hmm.
because tennis is supposed to be such an emotionless sport.
Mm.
You get reprimanded, especially as a female. Look at what would happen with Serena.
Hmm.
And she would constantly fight back and say, I guarantee you, you wouldn't have spoken this way about this male athlete
Hmm.
had this person reacted the way that I did.
Yeah. In fact, we've seen so many examples of that when you
Yes.
put, her videos and her incidents against what perhaps John McEnroe
Yes,
said to
exactly.
umpires and, the slamming of
Yeah.
the rackets and stuff like that.
And
So,
who are you going after? You're
yeah,
going after the females.
yeah.
You're
And the
going after.
marginalized ones at that.
Yes.
And that, I guess that's the trend I think that, you girls are here to help break. I'm
Yes.
here for it. I'm in full support.
We need a Slay times Rich Sport tennis event.
I'm here for that too. Now, Sarah, your background is also in fitness. Um, Tell me a little bit more about how you got started.
So I studied kinesiology going into college, and I went into the strength and conditioning route. So I did work at Notre Dame High School with the football team there as an assistant strength and conditioning coach. I learned so much. I loved working with those kids. I worked over at Sierra Canyon as a head tennis coach there and worked over at USC with the men's and women's volleyball and basketball teams. And I really got, for lack of a better word, disgusted of the politics that
Mm.
happen behind these schools.
Hmm.
And
What was happening?
there was a lot that would happen as far as how female coaches were being treated.
Hmm.
And I finally was sick of it.
Hmm.
I really was sick of it. And I decided, you know what? I don't want to continue this aspect of training. I don't have to do this. And anybody that trains is an athlete. So I don't have to just have the mentality of, I need to train athletes, because I was trying to put together that my experience of being a tennis player, I'd be able to help other athletes. And I didn't want it to go down the drain, all those years and
Hmm.
knowledge behind tennis, that I was forcing myself to stay in toxic work situations.
Where was the toxicity coming from? Like, what
Um,
was going on?
I'll give you a couple of scenarios. I won't put the claim on the schools,
Hmm.
but you can probably try and figure it out. I remember one of my first days coming in, and the person that interviewed me for the internship, because I worked very hard to get the internship, said to me, are you here for a boyfriend, or are you here to actually train? And I was flabbergasted. I didn't even know how to respond other than the fact of, I'm here to train. I'm here to
Oh
learn.
God, my face just dropped. I
Yes.
realized I'm literally just like, what the
Yeah.
Had you have not been female, that would have never been
No.
asked to a male coach.
No.
Had you not been extremely good looking, that would have never have been asked. Like, do you know what I mean? So many perceptions that someone to have
Absolutely.
made that assumption about you.
Yes. And then I remember one other, I mean, there are many incidences, and this was prior to, women in the sports industry really speaking up
Mm.
about what was going on. I remember another one. I was being introduced to the assistant coach of a certain team, and the entire athletic team was there. And he said, oh, this is my future ex-wife. I was like, okay. And as you do in those circumstances, when you are a young, up and coming coach student, I just awkwardly laughed
Hmm.
because I was like, what am I supposed to say? I need this job.
Yeah,
What am I going to do?
it's so fucked up.
Yes. And then I had my final incident that I'll talk about very vaguely. I remember I had a team, and I had the girls' team, and I got them their first win. And I was very excited about that. And second semester was coming on, and I said, oh, I'm going to get the boys' team too, right? And the athletic director was like, I don't know if I want a female as the boys' coach. It'll be
Mm.
too distracting. I was like, okay.
Well, then that is a reflection of you, not necessarily of the team per se.
Of
And
course.
like, there's the thing that is, I think, really fucked up about being a female coach
Mhm.
is the fact that everybody, first and foremost, we're very few and far between in
Mhm.
comparison, to male coaches.
Yes.
And the second thing, having started like a female first gym, you know, creating an environment where women are the center, men only benefit from that. Like some of my first clients here at Slay are male clients, and you attract a different type of client. You attract a different type of male, more
Mhm.
mature, more at home in his skin. You know what I mean? And as a female coach, you can do just as good a job. It's never, I think, with perhaps in certain environments where toxic masculinity is really, really rife.
Mhm.
Like it's such a shame that we're still having to face those issues in the
Absolutely.
workplace. Yeah, so disappointing that we female coaches are not being given the credibility or the respect that we deserve. You've studied just as long as the male coaches. You
Mhm.
deserve to stand there and not have to endure verbal and emotional abuse on your first day of work.
Of
Like the
course.
position that puts you in front of a whole team of athletes of this is my future ex-wife, they now are seeing you, you're forever going to be coming in as a, like, you know what I mean, not peer level, peer to
Mhm.
peer level,
Mhm.
but like a lower level.
And
And you're
as
going
an
to have to
object.
earn, absolutely, completely minimized your efforts, achievements, professionalism, and also physical and sporting prowess.
Mhm. Absolutely. At that time, I was juggling and I was still a student athlete because I left the tennis team after a year and a half,
Hmm.
and because I absolutely despised my tennis experience at the school, and to just endure that one after the other in the sports industry where I was determined. I was
Hmm.
determined I'm going to be in the sports industry. I'm going to take my tennis knowledge and take it and help others. And it threw me the other way
Hmm. But
completely.
you did become a best-selling author.
I did. I actually, from there, it made me open up my own
Hmm.
online fitness service that I was doing. I started training different celebrities at that time, and I got referred to go on tour with one of them. So, as a trainer, it's crazy because when I was a kid, I had in my mind, and I would write it, that I wanted to be an author. And because I would watch MTV Cribs and all that kind of stuff, I was like, I want to be a trainer that goes on tour with an artist.
Hmm.
And so I got to do that, and I got to go on tour with an artist.
Who was it?
It was Prince Royce. He is a Latin singer, and I was on tour with him for 5 weeks, learning how to train
Hmm.
at different facilities, and not learning how to train. Excuse me. I had to learn how to train him for a marathon because
Wow.
they called me, and they were like, because they knew I did sports specific, and they asked me. They said, "Have you ever trained for a marathon?" And I said, "Yes." I lied because I knew I'm smart.
Yeah.
And I said, "I'm going to go hire someone to teach me everything that they know. And at least I have my kinesiology
This is
degree.
why I love
So
Sarah.
I'm going to figure it out because these kinds of opportunities, you only get once,
Hmm.
twice if God is in your favor like that. It's like, let me throw you a bone." But I said, "You know what? I'm going to figure it out." And I lied and I said that, and I got hired, and I had 5 days to learn everything I needed to know about marathon training.
Hmm.
So I hired someone to teach me and give me their entire book
Yep.
of how they train. It was a coach for a
Yeah.
marathon. And I said, I could do this. Like, I
It's
know
pretty
form.
straightforward.
Yes.
Run at this pace
Yes.
for
But
this amount of time.
yes.
It's
But
going to be like 3 hours long. You
yes.
know what I mean?
But let me just tell you, I am not a long distance runner with
Neither am I.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is why I can mess with you for this, because what happened was he was for one of the runs, he had to do a 5K, and we were in, oh my God, Scranton, Pennsylvania. the middle of nowhere. I do not watch The Office, but people will be like, "Oh, like The Office." And I'll be like, "Yeah, The Office." But I don't watch it. And we were in 90% humidity, I want to say.
Oof.
I was not properly warmed up. And he was like, "You want to go on this run with me?" His security guard, who was 6'5", muscular like this, said, "No, like, I'm not running." And I was like, "I'm not going to be that." Can I say the B word?
Yeah.
I'm not gonna be that bitch. Like, I am going to, but I'm gonna be that bitch though.
Yeah.
I'm gonna be the one that says, you know what? Yeah, I'm gonna be the female that runs 5K. I was not trained to do 5K. We're 2 miles in, and I'm giving him like slow down, this, that, all the stuff that he had to do, the intervals that he had to do for that 5K. And we're 2 miles into it, and I hear pop, pop, and I was like, oh shit.
Gunshot.
Gunshot to my calves.
Oh.
There went my calves.
Oh
And I
no.
started limping because I don't know if you've ever had that calf strain, but it's no joke. It was, I'm going to say, like a grade 1 tear. And I'm like, oh no, I can't be, like, he can't know what's happening here. Like,
Oh, Sarah,
yeah.
you didn't.
So he starts running. I was like texting him at this point because I'm way back. He's like already way down there. And I was like, hey, I'm hurt. I'm calling an Uber. So I called an Uber. And I had the Uber drive me while he's doing the runs, and I'm in there, okay, speed it up, slow it
I
down,
love it.
and limped my way to the lobby. And everybody was looking like, what happened to you? I was like, this is why I
What a
stick to tennis.
what a G. What
But
a
yeah,
G. I love the fact you got an Uber
I
and then
called
was
an
just
Uber.
like, okay, off we go. Like it was the Tour de
Yeah.
France. You know what I mean?
The Uber was just looking at me like, what are we
Did
doing?
he run back to the hotel or did he jump in the Uber?
No, he ran. I stayed as much as I
Love it.
could until I was like, okay, he's going to make it back now, and hobbled my way over. But anyway, that
That
was the
is
story for
hilarious.
that. But it was due
Okay.
to tennis
So
that I got that.
after you recovered from your calf
Yeah.
injuries, God bless you. What's your daily routine like when it comes to fitness? Like these days, nowadays?
Nowadays, oh my gosh. So I feel at one point in coming back into fitness, I was into toxic wellness, I want to say.
Mm-hmm.
And there is such a thing.
Mm-hmm.
And my thing used to be do what's best for your body.
Uh-huh.
It is not one size fits all. I was that
Mm.
way with training, I was that way with my mindset. And then going into the wellness and fitness world at that time, where I'm reading studies and this is how it's supposed to be. And you have to be up at this hour and do this
Mm-hmm.
and do that. It doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
And you have to take it day by day. You are
Yeah.
not a robot. You are
Mm-hmm.
not a machine. So now I listen to my body. If I need to take that extra 30 minutes to sleep, because a lot of the wellness people would be like, don't hit snooze.
Mm-hmm.
It's the worst thing you could do for yourself. And I'm like,
It's the worst thing you can do if you're not self-motivated,
yes,
I think.
yes,
But I think if you're actually know you're going to get up and do a
yes,
workout, dude, hit snooze.
yes,
You're going to do it anyway. Do you know what I mean?
absolutely.
But if you're the type of person that's like, I'm never going to get this workout done, and you know it's never going to happen unless you get up now,
Yeah,
cool. But figure out the thing that works for you.
absolutely. There's no one size fits all for this sort of stuff. And for me, I went to the point where I was overtrained and I pushed
Mm-hmm.
through everything. And then look what happened to me. And so
Mm.
now I'm learning to rest without guilt,
Yes,
because you have to rest in order to put fuel back into the tank.
100%.
How are you supposed to continue to run on empty?
Mm.
And this is something I had to learn the hard way. And I've learned that now. And now that I'm back to strength and conditioning specifically for tennis,
Mm-hmm.
I'm really taking into count how many hours of sleep did I get?
Yeah. So sleep being obviously of really utmost priority to you, the
Yes.
sounds of it. Strength and conditioning. How
Mhm.
many lifts do you do a week? Lifting sessions?
3 times a week.
Solid. What's
And
currently in your program?
oh my God. So I am training with an ATP and WTA coach.
Mm-hmm.
So I got a tennis specific coach
Yep.
where I'm like, I already know how to lift and form and all of that. My education is from over 10 years ago. So I know there's so many different ways to train now for the sport specifically.
Hmm.
And so he has me doing all sorts of tennis related stuff that also play a part in what we do on a daily activity
Hmm.
that's kind of goes into that as well.
Hmm.
So
So super functional.
yeah, super
Wow.
functional training, but more tennis specific. So
Love it.
therefore, I can do the right things to not end up like this again.
Oh, bless you. Like, I obviously have a broken arm at the moment. However, I don't think that's actually going to harm my tennis game because it's pretty bad anyway.
You are not bad at all.
I mean, it's probably about as good as it was before. So I hope to join you very, very soon back on the court. But
Absolutely.
another question, are you going to go and watch Challengers? This is Zendaya's new movie. It's tennis based. Like, give us the lowdown, the premise. You've obviously seen it around.
Yes. I'm actually very excited to watch it because I'm so excited what it's doing to the sport.
Hmm.
I love Zendaya and I saw her form with her stunt double
Go on.
and
Is
she
this
was
on
just
the internet?
it's on the internet and I saw it and I was like looking at it I was like maybe I need to move a little more like that. So I was very inspired
She's
with the way
slick.
very slick, very fierce, very aggressive.
Oh,
I loved it, the elegance as well that she has, because
okay.
tennis is also a very elegant sport.
We're inviting her to play, I
She
think.
listen, she can coach me. In
Absolutely.
that movie, she's coaching those two boys. She can coach me too.
I love it. So the premise is, I thought it was going to be a biopic. I thought it was going to be a throwback, a biopic about
Mhm.
some, bygone tennis player that we'd never heard about. And then I was like, oh no, this is actually just like, this is, a female protagonist who happens to be a sportswoman
Yeah.
who then gets injured,
Mhm.
which a lot of us sportswomen can kind of like relate to,
Absolutely.
and then becomes a coach. She's coaching two guys, and both of which are love interests. I think you described it earlier as euphoria. What was it?
Euphoria on the big screen meets tennis, and
Yeah,
I'm here for it because I'm a huge Euphoria fan,
I
and
love
I
it.
love seeing that part of tennis. I
Yeah,
love not seeing it like most of the movies portray the sport of
absolutely.
this country club elitist
Yes.
sport, and I love that there is a storyline that can be spicy.
Hey. So my concern is twofold. So it's like, and I think this movie's going to do really well. It's
Yeah.
obviously been hyped up. It's Zendaya.
Mhm.
Can she ever do any wrong?
No.
Not really.
No.
My concern is, if we expect too much from the sport, like I was coming in and now my, perspective been super changed. That, the problem with sometimes when it comes to the big screen and when it comes to female sport is, if a movie doesn't do well, they'll just wipe out the category completely. You won't see another female sports movie for a long time. I've got a feeling though that's not going to be the case.
I don't think so either.
I've got a feeling that, and the thing that I feel really encouraged about is the fact that we have we have a female protagonist who is a sportswoman.
Mhm.
We very rarely see that on
Mhm.
screen, whether it be on a television show or in the movies. They're always a love interest, that
Mhm.
she's a writer, she's a fashionista, she's a creative, but she's never a sportswoman.
Mhm.
So I say that to say, Zendaya, if you're listening, we're here for you. We're here for the outfits. Sarah in particular is here for the outfits. Talk to us about that Vogue cover. You said she smashed the Vogue cover in honor
She did.
to Venus and Serena.
She did. I thought that was so fierce. And she's been doing a lot of, how can I say it? She's really doing it in the interviews where she's putting the spotlight on a lot of the female tennis players.
Yeah,
And that's so great to see because you don't always see that for the female tennis players.
yeah.
You see it for the males. And I love the fact that she's shining her light
On
onto
them.
the sport. So I that's why I love what they're doing with it. I think it's genius marketing. I love the strategy. I love that she is owning it the way that she is.
Owning it and acing it.
Oh, acing it too as she's serving.
Tennis pun and
It's
she
that all the
serves.
puns. I'm so done with all the
I
tennis.
love it.
Everyone is saying the same thing. And it was like when we were doing our um, photo shoot and everything, and we're thinking about that everything was a story. I was like, we're not using any of those tennis
You
puns
have
because
to.
I'm
They're going to
so
be,
done.
by the time 2024 is over, we're going to be over it.
Oh yeah.
Okay. So we're going to finish up with a quick game called In or Out.
Oh gosh.
I'm going to give you 10 quick fire topics. They're going to be tennis related. You got to tell me whether this topic is in fashion, or out of bounds. Okay. Tennis for fitness.
In.
Breaking stereotypes.
In.
White shorts for women.
Am I allowed to say something more than just
Absolutely.
in? Okay. In if that's your choice and that's your prerogative, not because it's a requirement.
Strawberries and cream.
It's in, and I actually have a very delicious recipe for that one that I took out the refined sugar.
Ooh, can you share it with us?
Absolutely.
Share
I'm
it
going
with
to
us
make
for
it for you.
Yeah, share it with us for this episode.
Yes.
Country clubs.
Out.
Oh,
Unless
spicy.
unless it's more welcoming.
Absolutely. And open for all.
Open for all.
Zendaya.
In.
In. Never out.
Never.
Backhand, sir. Backhands, just in general.
In, my favorite.
Forehand?
In.
Okay, both. That's how you know she's a real tennis player. Because I would have said forehand, in, backhand, out. Pickleball.
In.
Love it.
I will say, to go off that, there's so many tennis players that hate on the sport and make fun of it. And for me, I love seeing people out there. For the first time ever, I played pickleball yesterday.
Oh,
so
did
I think,
you?
Yes, I did. I actually played
You
yesterday.
popped your pickleball cherry?
I did. That was the first cherry popped in a very long time. So I was
Hey.
very excited.
There'll be a few more after this episode.
So it was fun, and I loved seeing just people out there. It's so nice to see people off their phones, off of just being inside and cooped up. And it's great to see you moving and doing social things. I miss that.
And then finally, paddle tennis.
In. I love it.
I don't know what the difference is.
I can't tell you either, but I
Okay.
do love it. And I love beach tennis.
I love that. Sarah, thank you so much for joining us on the Slay podcast. We are absolutely supporting you, rooting for you 100%. Anything you need from us, just give us a shout. We love you.
I need you as my doubles partner.
Game on. Game, set, and match. Let's go.
Pun intended. Thank you.
In summary, Serena Williams once said, "Everything comes at a cost. Just what are you willing to pay for it?" That concludes this episode of Slay. Stay tuned for more empowering discussions on female health, fitness, and life. You can follow me at Louise Hazel on social media, and you can follow Sarah at Sarah Koudouzian. And don't forget to check out her new brand at richsport.inc right now. You can check out the Slay brand at Slay Athletic, and don't forget to subscribe to the Slay podcast if you haven't done so already on Spotify. You can leave us a review there. You can also get all of the tools, resources, and Sarah's recipes from the Slay podcast. Download it now from the App Store on our Slay app and join our online community.